Hello and welcome to Smash Hits Sports. I'm your host, Cody. Today we're going to recap the NFC and AFC Championship games. We're going to give just the slightest preview for the Super Bowl, but we'll have a Super Bowl preview pod next week. Super excited for this matchup. Obviously, as a Bengals fan, a little disappointed that they will not be playing in the Super Bowl, but we still get a good matchup between the Eagles and the Chiefs. But let's start with that NFC Championship game. But before we get started, if you enjoy this type of content, be sure to hit that subscribe button, whether you listen to the audio version of the podcast or are watching here on YouTube. Absolutely make sure you guys hit subscribe. We're going to have a lot of really cool content coming up after football season's over. I have some really interesting interviews lined up that I cannot wait to share with you guys. So be a friend, tell a friend about the show, and subscribe. But let's get right into it. The NFC Championship game honestly stunk. I mean, this game, it was after the first quarter, once Brock Purdy got injured, this game was borderline dog shit. It really was, like, it was not great at all. When you look at, like, San Francisco had less than 100 yards passing. Like, they had 83 passing yards, 164 yards of total offense. There was nothing going in this game. And it looked like it was going to be close at first. I mean, the 49ers tied it, in the midway through the second quarter. It was tied 7-7. But after Brock Purdy went down, this game really was just, it was nothing. Purdy didn't do, he was 4 for 4, 23 yards when he got hurt, but there's just nothing you can do. Jalen Hurts, didn't have a phenomenal game. He did have a rushing touchdown, so that streak continues to live on. He's been an absolute monster in the running game this season, really starting to look like his former self before his injury at the end of the year. But Jalen Hurts didn't have a phenomenal game, 15 for 25, 121 yards. He didn't need to. The Eagles defense stepped up in a massive way. It was a big game for them getting after the quarterback. Their rushing attack was obviously incredible. 148 yards on the ground, but this game was over before halftime. It really was. That last fumble by Josh Johnson, it did him in. It is what it is. I feel bad for the 49ers. They just have not been able to catch a break with their quarterback play all season long. And with Trey Lance getting hurt and then Jimmy G getting hurt, I would love to see what this offense can do with a healthy starting quarterback. And not that Brock Purdy has done bad the last several weeks. I thought he's done phenomenally well. This is the first loss he's had as a starting quarterback. That being said, you still want to see what this offense can do with the guy that they traded up to go get in Trey Lance. And even with Jimmy G. So super disappointing to not, for 49ers fans not to be able to push past the NFC Championship. But when you look at how this roster is constructed, where they're at going forward, they still have Trey Lance on his rookie deal. I think they're going to be just fine. I would be shocked if they didn't make the playoffs again next year. But that being said, 49ers had high hopes. It's a disappointing season. For the Eagles, this is a continuation on what we had started earlier in the season. And I had the Sporty Jordan on to talk about the Eagles early on in the season. I believe it was after week 2. And she had predicted that the Eagles were going to win the Super Bowl at that time. And obviously she's biased as an Eagles fan, but I absolutely think that they have what it takes to take down the Chiefs. And you look at this game, Devonta Smith obviously had a phenomenal almost catch that was called a catch because of the Eagles doing a great job getting a snap off immediately after the play, making sure that the 49ers didn't have a chance to see it. But that being said, the Eagles have done exactly what they have needed to do all year. And for anybody who says that this is an easy path to the Super Bowl, that's kind of bullshit. Don't get me wrong, the Giants were not world beaters by any means, but you still had to play a divisional opponent in the playoffs for the third time, and then had to play against this 49ers team that had the best defense all season. And I understand, the quarterback injury sucks, but they, even before Purdy got hurt, the Eagles looked like they were going to dominate this game. So I'm excited. If you are an Eagles fan, you have to be excited. There are going to be a lot of really cool storylines and narratives that I'm going to talk about next week. But you have Andy Reid playing his former team in Philadelphia. You have the Kelsey brothers playing against each other. It should be Devonta Smith being the first player, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe since Charles Woodson to win both a national championship, a Heisman, and a Super Bowl if he ends up winning this game. So it'll be really, really interesting to see what they can do going forward. But I expect the Eagles to lean on their dominant running game, and, it should be a really, really good matchup. So that's all I have for the NFC Championship game. Now let's move on to the AFC Championship game. This one is bitter. As a Bengals fan, obviously it sucks that we lost this game. And while you can point to that, and I'm going to talk about the refs, we'll discuss it, but while you can point to the refs as the reason why you lost this game, Joe Burrow had 2 interceptions. You're not going to win a lot of games when you throw 2 picks. The offense didn't move the ball in the fourth quarter when they needed to. Their running game was non-existent. Joe Burrow led the entire, not only the Bengals, but led the entire game in rushing yards with 30. So they had I think they allowed 5 sacks, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check here. Yeah, 5 sacks allowed. Obviously, with a banged up offensive line, it's tough, but you still, too many mistakes, right? And you're not going to win a lot of games with these mistakes. The Bengals lost this game. The refs did not win this game for the Chiefs. The Bengals lost this game. However, refereeing at the highest level needs to be addressed. And I don't know what it's going to take for the NFL to figure this out, but this is not the only game that has been marred by really interesting and quite frankly confusing refereeing. And I think that's more than what it aligns to is not whether it's good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever. There are going to be missed calls no matter what, because what the human eye can see versus what the cameras are able to see, especially when we watch things in slow motion and watch them back, like the fan gets a view of the game that the refs simply don't have. And that gives the viewership a sense of knowing where the refs don't. And while this is an issue, the real issue that I have is when the refs seem confused or they don't know, it leaves the viewer lost. And that's not what football is. A very complicated game. For anybody who's played, it's a very, very complex game when it comes to rules. I mean, it's not. Basketball is a little bit simpler when it comes to rules. Same with baseball. It's a tough sport. Officiating needs to be transparent. And I feel like right now we're not getting that sort of transparency. Even if you were to come on after the game and be like, hey, this is why we called this. This is what we saw that led us to call this. I think that would leave a lot of fans more satisfied with what we're seeing. Because right now, I don't think fans are satisfied with the product on the field. Penalties obscure what should have been and what ultimately was a great game. Like a 20-23 came down to the last second of a game type of game. And all anybody is talking about is the terrible refereeing. So I think there are things that need to be addressed at the NFL top down. And maybe this is a topic for the offseason, but we need, like, the referee should be full-time. Like, the referee should not have to go and be like Ed Hockley, who was a lawyer during the week and then went and refereed on the weekends. Make these guys full-time employees. Make them go to camps. Make them do all these things and treat and make them essentially full-time employees like the NBA has, like the NHL has. I don't think there's a reason. There's enough money in the game of football that the refereeing, which is such a critical part of the game experience, is not at the highest level as it should be, because you see phenomenal things happening on the field every Sunday, the officiating should mirror that. That being said, there were missed calls, there were confusing calls. Call it what you want, call it bullshit. It is what it is. It happened. The Bengals did not do enough to win this game, right? The receivers did fine. I think Tyler Boyd was hampered by an injury a little bit, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. The Chiefs, on the other hand, they deserve every ounce of credit that they get. They are, and they doubted us. They doubted us. You were the favorites coming into this game for a reason, Kansas City. All right, don't get that twisted. That being said, you showed up when you were supposed to show up, and you showed up in a big way. And if you continue to show up when you need to, you're going to continue to win football games, and that's going to be the case in the Super Bowl. I mean, Patrick Mahomes on a hurt ankle had 29 for 43, 326 yards, 2 touchdowns. You want to talk about a stellar performance. That could be one that we talk about as far as like electric playoff performances in all of sports. I mean, like Jordan flu game, like it's a, maybe not that much, but it's still a phenomenal game by Patrick Mahomes. And he had to carry this team. I mean, the Chiefs had 42 rushing yards the entire game. There are very few games where you're going to win when you are so one-dimensional, and that just speaks to what Patrick Mahomes' greatness is. He is the best quarterback in the game right now. I think Burrow is elite. I think he is in that second tier because the first tier is Patrick Mahomes. It's only Patrick Mahomes, and there's nobody but Patrick Mahomes. And big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games. Travis Kelce looked great, 7 for 78 and a touchdown. He continuing to do Travis Kelce things. If you are a Chiefs fan, you have to hope that your offense is as dominant and will continue to be dominant in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. Because I think if you were to take a lot of individual position groups and say, well, I think the Eagles have a better offensive line. I think they have a better defensive line. I think they have a better secondary. They absolutely have a better running game than the Chiefs. But that being said, as long as the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, they have a chance to win every single game that they play. So it'll be interesting. Should be a great matchup. Really excited to see some of the storylines for this week as we go into the Super Bowl week. It should be really fun. That being said, that's all I really got for today's show. A nice quick one for you guys. As always, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. If you enjoy this content, be sure to like, subscribe, but most importantly, be a friend, tell a friend, share it to somebody who you think would also enjoy this type of content. You can follow me on all social medias at Smashhead Sports. We're starting to do some college basketball stuff on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter. So really exciting. We'll dive into college basketball on the podcast a little more after the NFL season, right? Because football is king. It always has been. It always will be. I appreciate you guys listening, and we will see you in the next one.